Hey guys, what's up? It's Tyler Kluver. This is the Snapped podcast. So glad that you're joining me. On this podcast, we're going to talk about diet, exercise, mindset, training, sports, performance, and any of the things that we discuss, me or the guests that I bring on, is going to help you get better and help you get healthier in some way or another. We're glad you're here. Sit back, relax. Let's have a day. What's up, people? We're back. Snapped episode 33, 34, one of those. Had a topic picked out for today, and then I decided, no, I'm going to go a different direction. Again, these are fluid podcasts, right? And I really, really appreciate those who listen to this podcast. It's astronomically smaller number than the amount that listens to, I guess not astronomically, but it's a smaller number than the Wash Up Walk-Ons. Obviously, it's a much more diluted focus into health and training and those who are just fans of me, which is hard to do because I'm not that interesting. But had a topic picked out. I have a running list of topics in my phone just so if I don't have something come to mind. I mean, I literally think of, hey, what am I going to do for the Snap podcast 2 hours before I do it normally. This one was this was the same, but then I realized that I wanted to do something else. And this isn't necessarily my idea or original creation, but I think it's very, very important. It plays off of the intermittent fasting sort of dietary philosophy that I've been using for the last 3 years, and it's kind of contextualized in a way that is much better than I could do anything. And I'm still not going to do it justice as I explain and go through this, but but hopefully I can get a C plus grade on a report over this concept. First off, this is I often listen to Tim Ferriss, and some of you may listen to him and his podcast. It's health focused, but not always health focused. It's kind of I think his whole thing is he likes to do stuff with the people that are best at what they do. Top performers is who he has on his podcast, regardless of whatever area of life that's in. Oftentimes it is in the health space. I don't know if I found this guy from him being on Tim Ferriss's podcast or Rogan's podcast or somebody's podcast, but somewhere along the line I found Peter Attia. And I will give you a short bio on Peter in a second. Basically, he's really into fasting. He's a doctor. He was formerly an ultra endurance athlete, a huge self-experimenter using all kinds of exogenous substances and diets and anything he can to kind of get the best out of his performance and out of his life. And he's really fascinating guy. I highly suggest following him on Instagram, and he might even have a YouTube channel. And then he has his own podcast called The Drive, which is probably the most in-depth podcast that I listen to. He brings on a bunch of smart people that talk about topics that I have no idea about with really big words. But I love his work on fasting and diet, and it's been very interesting to me. His official bio is a physician focusing on the applied science of longevity, as in regards to lifespan, obviously. His practice deals extensively with nutritional interventions, exercise physiology, sleep physiology, emotional and mental health, and pharmacology to increase lifespan, while simultaneously improving health span, which is how well you live versus how long you live. So his whole goal is how can you live more years and how can you make those years better? And I think that's something that at some level we should all be interested in. And obviously, that's part of what this podcast is about. Peter trained for 5 years at the Johns Hopkins Hospital in general surgery, where he was the recipient of several prestigious awards, including Resident of the Year, and the author of a comprehensive review of general surgery. He also spent 2 years at National Institute of Health as a surgical oncology fellow at the National Cancer Institute, where his research focused on immune-based therapies for melanoma. He has since been mentored by some of the most experienced and innovative lipidologists, endocrinologists, gynecologists, sleep physiologists, and longevity scientists in the United States and Canada. Peter earned his master's, well, his MD from Stanford University and holds a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering and applied mathematics. So he's done a bunch of shit, man. He does a lot. Peter also hosts The Drive, as I said before, a weekly deep dive podcast focusing on maximizing longevity and all that goes into that, from physical to cognitive and emotional health. It features topics including fasting, ketosis, Alzheimer's disease, cancer, mental health, and much more. And he has a bunch of other. He's also into archery, I think, which Rogan got him into. He's into like Formula One racing. This dude is extremely interesting. He was recently on the Tim Ferriss podcast. I believe he's been on there 2 or 3 times, maybe more. But he was just recently on in the last couple weeks. And this is a concept for today's podcast that I think is very, very easy to understand and makes it incredibly simple to think about diet. And he re-brought it up back on this podcast, and I had heard it before. I heard this topic over a year ago, and I think it's something that's very simple. And he calls it the 3 levers. He just calls it the 3 levers. I guess I'll call it the 3 levers philosophy or idea. Now, imagine that there's 3 things that you can play with your diet. We're going to make it very, very simple. There's 3 things, and these are the 3 levers. Number 1 is how much you eat, right? Total caloric intake, how many calories you're taking in. Okay. And that is something that a lot of people simply don't think about at all, right? And that's just one of the 3. The second lever is the timing, or how often you're taking in these nutrients. And that is something that really no one thinks about unless you get into this whole fasting world. And then the third lever is what you're taking in, right? So the quality, the actual foods that you're eating. So the idea with this is how Peter says it. He says, when thinking about the 3 levers, what, how much, and when, basically, are those 3. Always pull 1, sometimes pull 2, and occasionally pull all 3. Right? What does that mean? What does pulling one of those levers mean? It means basically altering that variable. So his idea is that you should always be pulling one of those levers, not in an extreme sense, but just every time you eat, there should be at least one of those should be a main focus of that meal. And that could be as simple, and most of the time for most people is going to look like, okay, I'm going to pull one of these levers. I'm going to pull on how much I eat, right? Simple. I'm eating this meal in a balance towards a certain number of calories, right? Or maybe you're always pulling on what you eat. You don't care so much about how much you're eating or when you're eating it, but you're always pulling the what lever of, well, I'm very focused on fruits, vegetables, lean meat, very healthy, whole foods that grow, right? Maybe you're always pulling the quality lever. Or, and this would be an interesting one, more so for experimentation and probably not the way you want to go about starting your health journey if you haven't tried to pull one of these levers yet. But you could just not worry about what you eat and not worry about how much you eat, but only worry about when you're eating. And that would be something like, okay, you eat McDonald's, you eat pancakes, you eat pizza, you eat all of these things. and you don't really care how much you're eating of it either, but you do focus on, well, I only eat one meal a day, or I only eat in a 4-hour window, right? And so again, the idea is to always pull one lever, sometimes pull two, and very occasionally pull three at a time. Um, and I think it's just a really easy way to I think it's a really easy way to think about diet, right? Because if we aren't, and I think he describes it this way as well on the podcast. He says if you aren't pulling all three, then you're basically eating the standard American diet, which has a incredible acronym for it, which is SAD, SAD. And if you're never pulling any of the levers, you're eating that diet, the standard American diet. You're eating whatever you want in whatever quantities you want, whenever you want, right? Not exactly a great equation, formula for health or success. Um, and I think most people would agree with that. I generally, I generally pull on the, um, I pull a little bit on the what lever, and I pull a little bit on the when lever as well. And I kind of pull on I definitely pull on, I'm always pulling on the first one, the how much, the total, right? And then the other two, I pull on just a little bit. If you want to be dialed in, if you want to be training for something specific and you want to match your caloric and dietary needs for your training, you're going to be pulling on all three somewhat most of the time, right? Um, I'm always pulling on the how much. I have an amount of calories that I'm trying to hit each day, both staying not too far under or too far over that number. So I'm very much so in tune with one. The timing lever, I don't so much pull as much as I used to. When I initially started intermittent fasting, I was pretty strict. Um, I would not eat outside of that kind of 6, 7-hour window that I had. Now, especially because of it's partially because of the training I'm doing, um, I need calories at certain times. It's good to refuel after a workout. Sometimes I'm working out twice a day right now. So I have to get in, some nutrients after those workouts. And I don't so much wait I don't have such a hard, fast, steadfast rule of you can't eat until noon. If it works out that my workouts are gonna fall at certain times of the day and just know that I'm gonna have to get calories at 9 AM, then I eat at 9 AM. But I still don't have a set breakfast. It's more so based on, okay, am I working out in the morning or doing anything in the morning that's gonna require calories? If not, then I pull the lever of, okay, I'm just waiting to that fasting window or that feeding window of basically 11 AM to 6 PM, right? And then the what lever, the quality lever, um, I'm probably the most lax on. I don't eat a lot of fast food. If I do eat fast food, I focus on the protein in the meal. I don't eat tons of processed food, but I do eat some. I'm not just I don't eat just fruits and vegetables and produce and meat and all stuff that grows. Like I definitely have stuff that comes out of the box. Um, but for the most part, I'm probably 50-50. So pulling that little lever as well. And what I do doesn't so much matter because it's individualized to my circumstance and what my goals are. But think about what your goals are and how pulling those three levers, and how even just thinking about nutrition in this sense could help you moving forward. Think about how often you pull each one of those levers, or if you pull them at all. Again, always pull one, sometimes pull two, and occasionally pull all three. Hopefully, you guys got something out of that little idea, that little philosophy. Again, Peter Attia, Attia. You can find him on Instagram, Twitter, and his podcast, The Drive. And he is a fantastic follow for the health space. So Hope you guys are having a fantastic week and you enjoyed this little bit of information. And I will talk to you guys next week. Peace.